can remember my first sales job right out of school. I was fortunate enough to land a position with a big pharma company. This was back in the 80s. And I remember back then, it was in vogue for pharmaceutical companies to hire pharmacists and physicians for these sales roles, because the thinking is that these folks already came to the position with an added amount of credibility. And of course, at that time, we were calling on physicians. So physicians knew and were aware that they were being called on from a pharmacist or even a previous colleague, that the added credibility was there. But what was missing was the salesmanship, because while the dialogue between the customer, who's the physician, and the salesperson, who was either a former pharmacist or former physician, the dialogue was rich between the two, there was no salesmanship, there was no sales interaction going on. You didn't see an increase in prescriptions, you didn't see an increase in product utilization, it was just good bantering back and forth. So even back then, I saw that identifying the perfect salesperson within the industry was somewhat of a challenge, because you didn't know whether getting credibility up front was important or selling skills. Okay, once it was determined that the prototypical pharma salesperson wasn't necessarily someone that came to the position with an advanced medical degree or advanced medical knowledge, in the 80s case a pharmacist or a physician, moving into the 90s, maybe the thinking is we'll go out and hire the quote-unquote pretty person. And so there was this big surge in the 90s to go out and hire these very attractive people to fill these sales roles. And again, the thinking here was access would be greater because physicians would want to see someone that was attractive. It would be a break in their day. Prescriptions would increase and product utilization would increase. But even in this situation, it was soon found out that while these folks were attractive, and true enough, they were getting access to the customer, in this case the physician, the salesmanship wasn't there, because once you get to a point where you're calling on the same physician or the same customer over and over again, we all know looks and these kind of superficial things kind of go by the wayside. Selling skills, intellect, competencies, these are some of the things that kind of come to the forefront once you establish a relationship with the customer. So the model here in the 90s was hiring these very attractive people wasn't necessarily the answer either. So it was still this constant manipulation of what the perfect salesperson should be. In the 80s, it was all about credibility and knowledge. In the 90s, it was all about superficial things. How the person looked would be able to increase our sales and bottom line. So we were still looking for the perfect salesperson. I chose the pharmaceutical industry just as my point of reference because that's where I started my career in pharmaceutical selling. But by no means is the pharmaceutical industry the only industry that goes by this model of determining who is the perfect salesperson, whether it be that person who has additional credibility coming to the position because of their knowledge, or is it the attractive salesperson, the person who is engaging? Let's talk about the charismatic person like a Donald Trump or an Oprah Winfrey. Identifying the perfect salesperson is an extremely challenging type of proposition because you're looking for all the characteristics that's going to help you drive your profits. And so determining the perfect salesperson is a huge challenge for any industry. I think we can agree that it's somewhat unrealistic to determine the perfect salesperson, or what are some of the specific characteristics that will predict someone's going to be very successful as a salesperson if we're hiring them, if we're looking to hire them, or just quite frankly identifying the perfect prototype of a salesperson. But there are a few questions that we can ask ourselves in making this assumption of who would have the best opportunity to be a successful salesperson. And there are 3 questions. First, you'd have to kind of ask yourself, as the person doing the identifying, what is your view of the sales profession? What are some of the biases that comes along with dealing with salespeople? What are some of your own internal biases when it comes to dealing with salespeople? And then most importantly, and this is a somewhat provocative question, what type of salesperson are you most comfortable interacting with? Because as we all know, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right? In some cases, some people may think one salesperson is very good and the other person may think they are not so good. So oftentimes, it's our own subjectivity of what we deem is the quote-unquote perfect salesperson. You know, I used to have these heart-to-heart conversations with my sales personnel back when I was in management. And even today, when I'm working with salespeople and working with companies, I always tell them that the one thing that you have total control over is how you present yourself in front of the customer. And this whole idea of first impression selling is so critically important. because before any word comes out of your mouth, do you know you're being sized up? My last video, I talked about how sales mimics life, and it really does, because even in this situation, whoever you're talking to, they're going to make a decision mentally based on how you come across, whether they want to spend some time interacting with you or they want to walk away from you. You look at this picture here, kind of hard to tell who's the salesperson and who the customer is, because they all present themselves very well. How we present ourselves from a first impression standpoint is vitally important. So digging deeper in this whole idea of first impression selling, what is projecting the right image? What is the non-verbals? Well, there's 4 areas. There's posture, there's facial expression, there's dressing and grooming, and there's being on time. Okay, let's look at posture. Yeah, you do. You want to stand straight and comfortably. You don't want to stoop or stand too casually because it may come across as disrespectful or that you might be tired. Another point that's not on here, you don't want to stand stiff because that could be a sign of nervousness, but you just want to kind of hold your ground, stand comfortably, stand straight, and then when you're interacting with a customer, oftentimes customers may move away, they may move to the side. There's always this personal distance, this comfort zone. Posture is very important. Facial expressions, I don't know about you, but a pet peeve of mine is eye contact. It is so important when you're speaking with someone, or vice versa, when this person is speaking with you, that there's eye contact made between the two parties. And in the sales situation, eye contact is extremely important because it shows that obviously you're interested in the customer and what the customer has to say, and the customer, vice versa, is interested in what you have to say. And it really is a sign of respect. Eye contact is extremely important in any type of interaction. Showing a genuine smile, I think people can kind of read right away whether your smile is genuine or whether it's fake or phony. So obviously a genuine warm smile is always a good thing to do in any type of interaction. Again, everyone likes a happy and cheerful person. A mentor of mine told me this long ago, and it's always stuck with me, that as a salesperson, you do not have the luxury of having a bad day. Think about it. If you're speaking with a customer and you're coming across as sad or depressed, that's probably not a good way to go in an interaction with the customer and trying to get them to purchase your product. And again, most people like to deal with people who are happy and cheerful and just are willing to be there in that interaction with you. Dressing and grooming, this is a very explosive subject and one that's been at odds with many people for many years and even today, in that what is the appropriate dress code in first impression selling? You look at the second bullet point, a customer's going to notice right away your dress and grooming. And that's true, and we talked about this earlier, in that the customer is making their decision or their evaluation of you within the first few seconds of meeting you, and part of that is looking at how you're dressed and how you're groomed. But I agree with the third bullet point, which is very true, in that regardless of your dress and your grooming, it should project a business image. The last one, being on time, yes, it's self-explanatory and it's common sense. We don't want to be late for an appointment, and of course being late for an appointment really shows a level of disrespect for the customer. And rushing to sales appointments, we've all done that. You're running late, you're trying to get there, and the one thing we don't want to do is get into a car accident. Of course, rushing to an appointment really doesn't provide good time management. Being on time is extremely important, especially when we talk about first impression selling, because it tells the customer, if you are late, that obviously you don't value the time, and you don't really value the interaction that they put aside for you. It just shows a lack of disinterest. Another thing, being too early shows maybe a sign of too much eagerness. You want to be there on time, and if you're going to be there late, you might want to call ahead of time and let the customer know that you're going to be a little bit late, or if you're there early, prepare for the call. Maybe set up your objectives of the call, what you want to get accomplished in the call. Being on time is common sense. Keep in mind, it's first impression selling. This last quote really captures the essence of first impression selling. Professional and respectful approach will always be favored over the opposite. And it is important that sales representatives read the customer's nonverbal while listening more than talking. Not only will you be an effective salesperson if you follow these steps, but you will be an effective person as well. And when we talk about first impression selling, that's the one thing that each and every one of you as salespeople have control over, is how you come across, whether it's in a selling situation or whether it's just an interaction that you have in your personal lives. Thank you so much. Hope that those of you who sell for a living took some nuggets away, and even those of you who don't sell for a living, hopefully you're able to get some things out of this presentation. I'm Andre Harrell, CEO of Age Square and Beyond Consulting. Please visit our website. We're at Age Square and Beyond, where we offer a variety of services in sales, marketing, and training.